It started with a simple traffic stop. A Volkswagen Beetle, nothing unusual. But when police looked inside, what they found would unravel one of the darkest, most terrifying chapters in American history. Handcuffs. A ski mask. A crowbar. Rope. Trash bags. And an ice pick. The man behind the wheel? Theodore Robert Bundy. A name that would soon strike fear into millions. Ted Bundy wasn't just a killer. He was a manipulator, a predator who used charm, intelligence, and good looks to mask a horrifying truth. Behind the friendly smile and well-spoken manners was a man capable of unthinkable violence. Over the course of 4 years, across multiple states, Bundy would stalk, abduct, and murder young women. His crimes were not only brutal, they were deeply unsettling because they shattered the image of what a monster should look like. This is the story of Ted Bundy, the charming serial killer who terrorized a nation. Ted Bundy was born on November 24, 1946, in Burlington, Vermont. From the outside, his early life appeared normal. But Bundy grew up under a web of lies. For much of his childhood, he believed his mother was his sister, and his grandparents were his real parents. This family deception planted the seeds of confusion and resentment in young Ted. By the time he reached high school and college, Bundy appeared to be a clean-cut, intelligent young man. He was well-dressed, polite, and even politically active. Friends and acquaintances described him as charming, the kind of person who could blend into any crowd, win over a room with ease, and make women feel comfortable around him. But underneath that mask of normalcy, Bundy was struggling with darker urges. As a teenager, he developed an obsession with pornography, particularly violent images. Over time, this fascination grew into something far more dangerous. By the early 1970s, Bundy seemed to have everything going for him. He attended the University of Washington, studied psychology, and volunteered at a crisis hotline center where he worked alongside Enrule, who would later become famous for writing The Stranger Beside Me, one of the most haunting accounts of Bundy's double life. Enrule described Bundy as a kind, compassionate man who genuinely cared for others. Little did she, or anyone else, know that while he was saving lives on the phone line, he was preparing to take them in real life. Bundy's first confirmed murders began in 1974 in Washington state. His victims were young women, often college students. His method was cunning. He would fake an injury, sometimes wearing a sling or walking on crutches, and ask women for help. Once they let their guard down, he would abduct them. That was Ted Bundy's signature. Not brute force at first, but manipulation. He weaponized trust. Seattle, Washington. College campuses had always been places of safety, communities filled with energy, ambition, and promise. But in January of that year, something sinister began to spread across the university district. Young women were vanishing, and no one could explain why. On January 4th, 18-year-old Karen Sparks was attacked in her basement apartment. She was brutally beaten with a metal rod and left for dead. Though she survived, the trauma would never fade. For investigators, this was only the beginning. Just a month later, on February 1st, Linda and Healy, a 21-year-old college student, disappeared from her off-campus home. Police found her bed neatly made, blood on the pillow, and her nightgown missing. It was as if she had been silently plucked from her life, without a trace. Then came April. Donna Gail Manson, a 19-year-old student, vanished while walking to a concert on campus. Her body was never found. By May, 22-year-old Roberta Kathleen Parks disappeared after leaving her dormitory for coffee with friends. The disappearances continued month after month. Janice Ott, Denise Naslund, George Ann Hawkins. All young, all bright, all gone. What made Bundy's crime so chilling wasn't just the brutality. It was the methodical way he hunted. Bundy blended into the very world he was destroying. Witnesses often described him as handsome, polite, even vulnerable. He would approach women with his arm in a sling or his leg in a cast, asking for help loading books or carrying something to his car. But once inside his tan Volkswagen Beetle, there was no escape. Inside, Bundy had modified the passenger side, removing the handle from the door so his victims couldn't flee. Police and the public were baffled. It seemed unthinkable that someone so normal could be responsible for the disappearances. Women began traveling in pairs. Universities warned students to be vigilant. But Bundy was always one step ahead. Then, July 14, 1974. A warm summer day at Lake Sammamish State Park. Thousands gathered for picnics, swimming, and sunshine. In the middle of it all, Bundy prowled. Witnesses saw a man introducing himself as Ted, wearing a sling, and asking women to help him with his sailboat. That day, 2 women, Janice Ott and Denise Naslund, disappeared, just hours apart. For the first time, Bundy's name surfaced in police reports. Multiple witnesses described his approach, his Volkswagen, and his charm. Still, without concrete evidence, the investigation stalled. As months turned into years, Bundy's killing spree spread across states, from Washington to Oregon, Idaho, Utah, and Colorado. His victims' ages ranged from teenagers to women in their mid-20s. Each crime carried Bundy's chilling signature: manipulation, abduction, and ultimately murder. The full number of victims remains unknown. Bundy confessed to 30 murders before his execution, but experts believe the real number may be much higher. What's certain is this: Ted Bundy left a trail of fear, grief, and unanswered questions across America. But his reign of terror didn't last forever. Eventually, investigators began to connect the dots, and Bundy would find himself trapped in the very web of lies he had spun. By 1974, fear had gripped the Pacific Northwest. Parents warned their daughters not to walk alone. Universities held safety meetings. Newspapers printed story after story of missing women. Police faced mounting pressure. At first, the disappearances seemed random. Different towns, different times. But slowly, a pattern began to emerge. The victims were young, attractive, with long brown hair parted in the middle, a hauntingly consistent detail that investigators could no longer ignore. And then came Lake Sammamish. Witnesses provided police with something they had been desperately missing: a name. Ted. A man with a sling, driving a tan Volkswagen Beetle. For the first time, detectives had a suspect profile. But here's the chilling twist: Ted Bundy was already on their radar. A woman who dated him had contacted police after seeing the composite sketch. She described him as intelligent, charming, but sometimes unsettling. Still, when detectives ran Bundy's name against the limited evidence they had, he didn't fit their image of a killer. He was a law student, a rising political figure, a man with friends in high places. So the investigation continued, while Bundy kept killing. By August 1975, Bundy's luck began to crack. A patrol officer in Utah noticed a suspicious Volkswagen Beetle driving through a residential neighborhood late at night. When he pulled Bundy over, he found masks, handcuffs, a crowbar, and an ice pick inside the car. It looked less like a student's belongings and more like a killer's tool kit. Bundy was arrested. Detectives began to piece together the puzzle. Survivors of attempted abductions identified Bundy in police lineups. His Volkswagen Beetle was linked to multiple disappearances. Evidence was mounting. Still, Bundy remained calm, confident, and disturbingly persuasive. He represented himself in court, flashing his charm and intellect. And then came his first escape. In 1977, While acting as his own attorney in Colorado, Bundy was granted access to the law library. Guards looked away for just a moment, and Bundy leapt from a second-story window. He disappeared into the mountains, sparking a massive manhunt. He was captured 6 days later. But it wasn't over. That December, Bundy escaped again, this time by sawing a hole in the ceiling of his jail cell and climbing into the ventilation system. For weeks, no one knew where he was. By the time police realized, Bundy was already in Florida. In 1978, Bundy unleashed his most brutal attacks. At Florida State University's Chi Omega sorority house, he broke in during the night. Within just 15 minutes, he savagely attacked 4 women, killing 2. Days later, he kidnapped and murdered 12-year-old Kimberly Leach. This time, Bundy couldn't escape justice. His face was plastered across newspapers and television screens. Witnesses came forward. Evidence was undeniable. In February 1978, police pulled Bundy over once again in a stolen vehicle. When asked his name, he finally admitted, "I'm Ted Bundy." The manhunt was over. Ted Bundy's trial became a national obsession. For the first time in U.S. history, a murder trial was broadcast live on television. Millions of Americans tuned in daily, watching the spectacle unfold like a macabre drama. And Bundy relished the attention. Representing himself in court, he strutted before the jury, questioning witnesses, flashing smiles, and even winking at cameras. Some described it as chilling arrogance. Others saw it as desperation. But make no mistake, the evidence was damning. Survivors of his attacks testified against him, their voices trembling as they recounted the horrors of that night. One woman, who barely escaped Bundy's grasp, told the jury, "He looked normal, he looked safe. But when he smiled, it was the smile of a predator." The prosecution presented bite mark evidence, linking Bundy to one of the Chi Omega sorority murders. Forensic experts matched the impression left on the victim's body to Bundy's teeth, an exact fit. It was the final nail in the coffin. On July 24, 1979, Ted Bundy was found guilty of murder and sentenced to death in the electric chair. But Bundy wasn't finished with the spotlight. During the 1980s, while awaiting execution, Bundy continued to manipulate the media. He granted interviews, offered chilling details about his crimes, and even gave psychological insights into the mind of a killer, always referring to himself in the third person, as if he were analyzing someone else. In 1984, the FBI's newly formed Behavioral Analysis Unit consulted Bundy for help in catching another active serial killer, the Green River Killer. Bundy's twisted understanding of predators made him a valuable, if disturbing, consultant. Meanwhile, Bundy's fanbase grew. Letters poured into his cell, many from women who claimed they were in love with him. Some even attended his trial, smiling at the accused killer from the gallery. This phenomenon stunned the public. How could a man responsible for so much horror attract admiration? It was the ultimate proof of Bundy's terrifying charm. But Bundy's time was running out. After years of appeals, his execution date was finally set, January 24, 1989. That morning, crowds gathered outside Florida State Prison. Some held signs reading, "Burn, Bundy, burn!" Others sang, cheered, and even sold T-shirts. It felt less like an execution and more like a public event. At 7:16 a.m., Ted Bundy was strapped into the electric chair. When the switch was pulled, the man who had terrorized America for over a decade was gone. Reporters rushed out with the official announcement, "Ted Bundy is dead." Ted Bundy's story is more than just the tale of a killer. It's a reminder of the darkness that can hide behind the most charming smile. A reminder that evil does not always look like a monster lurking in the shadows. Sometimes, it looks like the man next door. Bundy thrived because people trusted him. They believed his words, his charm, his false vulnerability. And in that trust, they lost everything. Even decades later, Bundy continues to haunt the collective memory of America. His crimes reshaped how we think about serial killers, not as deranged outsiders, but as predators who can walk, talk, and blend in among us. He once said in an interview, "We serial killers are your sons, we are your husbands. We are everywhere. And there will be more of your children dead tomorrow." Chilling words from a man who understood just how ordinary evil could appear. And that is perhaps Ted Bundy's most terrifying legacy. Thanks for watching. And if you would like to support the channel, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue to uncover the stories that lie beneath the surface. Stay curious, stay aware, and stay with us for more powerful stories like this.